There is no single word, there are only circumlocutions to describe a situation in which I found myself. The woman I was seeing got pregnant by me, then she had an abortion. Whereas I wasn't pregnant, I was seeing a woman who was pregnant by me. Then I didn't have an abortion, but I was seeing a woman who has aborted the child of his that she was carrying. A word for her, a heavy formula for me. I accumulate beginnings. When I was 13, on a trip to Val d'Isère, I went back to the chalet to get my sunglasses in the middle of the morning. I took off my snow boots. I went into the dormitory in my socks, not making any noise. There I surprised a 40-something counselor in the middle of masturbating a 10-year-old boy who had to stay in bed because he'd broken his leg. The counselor snatched back his hand and smoothed down the sheet, and that night, while he was making his rounds between the beds for lights out, I called out across the dormitory, "I'm sure he hasn't got any underpants on under his sweatsuit," right as he was passing me. I pulled down his pants. He was naked. He blushed and ran out without saying anything to me. For the rest of the trip, he went to great lengths to make sure our paths never crossed and our eyes never met. I couldn't say whether I'd prefer to have my left arm amputated or my right leg. When I read psychiatric manuals, I often find that I have one symptom of the illness they describe, sometimes more than one, sometimes every symptom. I do not write in order to give pleasure to those who read me, but I would not be displeased if that was what they felt. I can tear a piece of writing paper folded in 2, in 4, in 8, in 16, in 32, in 64, but no more. For reading, my favorite positions are in order: lying down, sitting in an armchair, sitting on a sofa, sitting at a table, standing up. Often I think I know nothing about myself. I cannot bring myself to hate Jacques Chirac. I like to watch a plastic bag flying around between office buildings, especially when you can't tell whether it's going up or going down. When I ask for directions, I am afraid I won't be able to remember what people tell me. I especially dread those useless directions that consist of people saying, "Then you'll see a pizzeria, that's not the place." I'm always shocked when people give me directions and they actually get me where I'm going. Words become road. I like slow motion because it brings cinema close to photography. I get along well with old people. I've yet to meet an old man who still listens to rock, but then I haven't met any old men who listened to rock when they were young. To feel pity makes me sad, but to be the object of someone else's pity makes me sadder. I have missed 2 important meetings for the same reason. One with a Polish minister of culture, whom I was supposed to interview, the other with an American judge, whom I was supposed to photograph. I showed up late because I lost track of time. When I was 18, I showed up late to a history class. The teacher didn't scold me directly, but he shared this verdict with the class: "Those who arrive late in youth arrive late all their lives." On a trip, I fold my dirty laundry so it will take up less space. I could not be the same person in another body. I cannot bear to think about the death of someone I love. When the person dies, I suffer 2 losses. The person is dead, and the unthinkable has occurred. I remember my dreams better when they are useful for my work. I love to recall my dreams, no matter what is in them. My dreams are structured so much like memories of things that happened in real life. Sometimes I wonder whether they didn't. If I sleep badly, I dream more, or else I remember my dreams better. I do not interpret dreams. My dreams are as strange to me as those of other people. It makes me laugh when people tell their dreams. On several different tables at my high school, I read these sentences, written one after the other. God is dead. Nietzsche. Nietzsche is dead. God. I do not sleep under a comforter, but under blankets, which I pull up if I get cold. A comforter rarely produces the right temperature. I have insulted just one person, the cultural counselor at the consulate where I did my military service. My memory embellishes. I often apologize, always thinking I shouldn't and that I shouldn't have to. Over one summer, I got 6 tick bites. Only 4 years later did I become convinced that I had contracted Lyme disease after I read a list of the symptoms on a website. I have cheated on schoolwork, but not at games. I dine alone in a restaurant if I have no choice, which happens only on trips. To dine alone in a restaurant seems paradoxical to me. Going out to a restaurant is festive. Festives are collective. To find out whether I was a homosexual, I tried to masturbate while thinking of men. It didn't work. When I watch the hunting show Tres Chasse, I have the impression that the hunters feel no guilt after the orgasm of the shot. I thank people easily. Ever since I saw Jaws, I have been unable to swim in the sea without thinking about the sharks that may be on their way to get me. One hot, dry summer, my mother read to me from the book Alive every night after dinner. It was an account of a plane crash in the Cordillera, in the Andes. The survivors ate the bodies of the others in order to stay alive. I was 11. I don't know why my mother read me this story. I have seen several of the Friday the 13th movies. After the one called Friday the 13th, the final chapter, in which Jason dies, I thought that was the end of it, but a new episode came out, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. I try to write prose that will be changed neither by translation nor by the passage of time. I like to finish a task on time. That is, when the big hand of the clock is on the 12. I do not think I have inspired pity. In Vieux Bucao, I tried to surf one afternoon without success. I had no intuitive sense of how it ought to be done, or of the pleasure I'd feel if I did it right. One July, I passed someone who had a face like the Elephant Man's. I was on my bike. I was going fast. I thought I had hallucinated it. I turned around to catch up with him. I hadn't been wrong. But when I see something exceptional, I think for the first few moments that it's an illusion. A woman's breasts may hold my attention to the point that I can't hear what she is saying. I wish I were the singer in a rock band. I do not wish I were an anchorman. Out of curiosity, I accept the first invitation to dinner with people who I already know are going to bore me, but the subsequent ones I decline. When something wonderful takes me by surprise, I try to reproduce the circumstances under which it occurred in order to make it happen again. But that is confusing the thing with the grace of the accident. A friend of a friend claimed that she could return to an interrupted dream once she had woken up by going back to sleep. She also claimed that she could intervene consciously while she was sleeping in the contents of her dreams and return to her favorite moments. I do not always choose the best moment for saying goodbye in a public place to someone who is busy with something else. Sometimes the person doesn't hear me, so I try again, hoping no one else has overheard. I was speaking with a friend who was very beautiful but distant, when some snot lodged itself in the edge of her nostril. Ever since this anodyne event, I have found her less distant, although her behavior hasn't changed. I have sometimes looked under the bed before I got into it. I regret not having been born in 1945. I would have been 23 in 1968. I would have lived through the sexual revolution and believed in various utopias during the 1970s. I would have made a lot of money in the 1980s, which I would have happily spent in the 1990s, and then I would have enjoyed a comfortable retirement full of happy memories in the 2000s. Unfortunately, I was born in 1965, and I was 20 during the 1980s, indisputably the ugliest years since the end of the Second World War. When I walk down the street, the words on signs and in shop windows get mixed up in my head and turn into absurd slogans. I would forgive a woman for cheating on me if the other man was better than I am. I like the smell of my hair, even dirty. It amazes me that I can lift my arm without understanding how my brain transmits the order. I'm always telling myself that I ought to write positive things, and I do, but it's harder than writing negative things. In a sandwich, I don't see what I am eating, I imagine it. When I am in front of the TV, I don't enjoy what I eat because I don't look at it. Even when I'm very tired, I can watch TV for several hours. I had an idea for a bad video. To humiliate a turkey by having it walk around in public with a t-shirt bearing the face of Jacques Chirac. When I'm in a foreign country, I do things that I would never dare to do in my own country, because everything seems like fiction. Since I started writing on a computer, I have saved everything I write by hand. I do not dream of flying. In the middle of summer, a rainy day makes me as happy as a sunny day in the middle of winter. When I'm in the foreign country, I pay more attention to the norm than to the exceptions. I would rather spend time in small cities than have nothing remarkable about them than in capitals full of curiosities. I have not put on rubber boots in at least 3 years. I suppress the superfluous. I am handsomer with a cane. I don't need to talk much. I do not talk much. I do not shout. I eat 3 times a day. I do not eat between meals. I drink 2 liters of tea a day. I need to leave the house at least once a day. Once when I was 6, I was running up the boulevard in Saint Michel. I was racing my cousin back to school, each of us on his own sidewalk. I crossed without looking. A car hit me. I flew 2 meters and landed on my head, nose broken, face bloody. The car drove off. Someone got the license number. The driver was a nursing student. My father went to see her. He had decided not to lodge a complaint because he didn't want to ruin her future career. She wouldn't see him. She lived with her mother, who opened the door a crack and said, "If you've come to blackmail us, get lost," and slammed it shut. When I was 14, I had my ears pinned back at the suggestion of my father, who had his ears pinned back when he was 18. When I was 12, I had warts on my left heel. Several treatments failed to get rid of them. My mother decided to have them burned off, a very painful operation that my brother was supposed to have undergone a few years earlier. But the day before the operation, his terror had literally made the warts disappear. Hoping the same thing would happen to me, but it didn't. The dermatologist worked away at my foot for an hour. When we left his office, my mother said, "I think I suffered worse than you did." 2 months later, the warts came back. 1 year later, another dermatologist, whom I trusted the moment I saw him because of his gentle face, made them disappear in 4 sessions by applying a brown odorless cream that he had concocted himself. I learned 10 years later that he had died of AIDS. I have Asian friends. I do not eat ice cream. I do not fill my house with fines. In nearly empty restaurants, I count the number of people and pity the fate of the restaurateurs. I cannot stand to read vernacular English translated into French. The expressions, often misplaced, are dredged up from the translator's youth or from what he believes to be the language of the street. I enjoy the simple decor of Protestant temples. I admire American religious ceremonies where the preachers launch into sermons that come close to song and trance, as if they might revive that morbid, desireless event, the Mass. In my periods of depression, I visualize the funeral after I kill myself. There are lots of friends there, lots of sadness and beauty. The event is so moving that it makes me want to live through it, so it makes me want to live. I don't know how to leave naturally. I want to laugh with common people, tattooed, fat, bare-chested in a campground, making lots of noise and off-color remarks. I shave with an electric razor. It's quicker and less painful than a blade. I often wonder what people say about me right after I leave. Maybe nothing. I have had 4 motorcycles, a Kawasaki Zephyr 750, a Yamaha SR 125, a Honda CB 500, a Kawasaki ER 500. I do not write memoirs. I do not write novels. I do not write short stories. I do not write plays. I do not write poems. I do not write mysteries. I do not write science fiction. I write fragments. I do not tell stories from things I've read or movies I've seen. I describe impressions. I make judgments. It is no use asking me to repeat a news story, even one with a few weeks old. I don't learn the names of cabinet ministers by heart. I learned what little I know about agropolitics in prep school. I visit numerous buildings, though I have no technical knowledge of architecture. It amazes me that they can construct a vault, a ceiling 20 meters high, a tunnel, a skyscraper. I don't want to know any more about it because I'm afraid I will be disenchanted. I know nothing about the mechanics of automobiles, but I am not amazed that cars go. I would like to accept the idea of love without passion. Sports on TV bore me. Concerts on TV bore me. I find the musicians badly dressed with bad haircuts. I do not go to concerts. I have a recurring nightmare. In an apartment where I've been living for several years, I find a hole in a room that I rarely use. The hole is accessible from outside, so all that time anyone could have come in without my knowing it, and maybe they have. I prefer lamps with lampshades to halogen lamps. Someone playing the saw depresses me more than the accordion, but less than clowns. The traditional circus revolts me more than figure skating. I can manage to snicker at synchronized swimming, but not at figure skating. In curling, the sweeper makes me laugh. I feel sorry for actors who have reinvented themselves as Renaissance jesters in sound and light shows, especially if they take their jobs seriously. I have witnessed an air guitar competition. I find mimics reactionary. I would rather watch bad mimics who think they are doing impressions of celebrities, but only mimic other mimics. In disused factories and abandoned barns, I feel emotions that are aesthetic, beauty defined by function, nostalgic, sites of production where nothing now is produced, erotic, memories of children's games, beneficent vacuity, calm, all mixed up, in a tingling way, with feelings of death, fear, perfect scene for a crime, and the forbidden, no one gave me permission to enter this private property. I always regret taking a shower at night. The hot water keys me up and keeps me from sleeping. I feel irritable and sticky if I don't wash in the morning. My oldest memory is of a creek in Spain with a high, steep bank. I am wearing a white hat and don't know how to swim. According to my mother, this happened when I was less than 2 years old. The ticking of the alarm clock and the dripping of radiators keep me from sleeping. I sleep better in absolute darkness. I have dry skin. As a hypochondriac, I rejoice in my ignorance of most diseases. I drink water. I do not drink lemonade. I drink Coca-Cola. I do not drink beer. I drink red wine when I eat and sweet whites by themselves. I often remember that there is something I'm forgetting, but what? I prefer beginnings to endings. I do not scorn the teachings of my mother. I have not managed to describe the pain of a powerful electric shock. I am surprised that some people worship Satan. The names makes you think more of profanation than cults. I have taken Prozac, Lysantha, Athomil, Lexamil, and Temesta without success. I have stolen things from shops, but not from people's homes. I've never swindled anyone. I do not feel joy doing evil. I saw a madman walking up the boulevard Beaumarchais in his socks in the middle of the street, creating a traffic jam that moved as slowly as he did. He wore white and gazed up at the sky, trailed by the furious honking cortege of cars. It wasn't until he got to Place de la République that he deigned to step up onto the sidewalk. When I lived in the Rue Légendaire, I often saw a woman in her 60s who was a mass of nervous tics. I wondered how she managed to smoke without burning herself. 3 things make pools unpleasant: the locker rooms, the fluorescent lights, the smell of chlorine. I have no financial woes. I wait to sort my mail. My life is nothing like a hammer. I wish there were 1-liter bottles of wine. In an abandoned factory, I smelled a mixture of dust, grease, old photographs, and fossilized sweat. I think the rich are wickeder than the poor. I love you can be a form of blackmail. I do not force myself to be enthusiastic, even with people who are. I've spoken with several American Indians. I've spoken with several Indian Indians. I've spoken with at least 1,000 Americans. I have no obese friends. I have no anorexic friends. I cannot integrate myself into a group of friends who already know each other. I will always be the latecomer. I like groups of friends formed all together at the same moment. I do not know what to expect from love. Passionate declarations make me think of hysteria. A friend of mine swears that people behave more aggressively toward him when he wears his red suit. Here is how they tell the story of Jesus. An adulteress got her husband to believe that she was impregnated by God. She drove her son crazy with this story, which he believed. He set off to announce the good news, and it got him killed. I have sometimes thought that everything I know is stored in my brain, so I think intensely about this flimsy piece of flesh, but I feel a void. The organ evokes nothing in me. I am unable to think about the organ of my thinking. I do not iron my shirts. I do not think my house is tilting to its death. Too much light doesn't bother me during the day, but it gives me neuralgia at night. I have no spiritual father. I do not know what debts I owe to which artists. I do not feel myself under the influence of any writer. I am more guest than host. I do not wear tight pants. They prevent me in writing. I never have finished the Bible. I will never be done in the search of lost time. When I get to the end, I've forgotten the beginning. Starting again doesn't change that. I admire Douglas Hubler and Edward Rushka. I admire Walker Evans, Diane Arbus, Stephen Shore, and Joel Sternfeld. I have an idea in mind for a piece, and it turns out already to exist. I don't abandon it. The piece is not the idea. I can't read a stolen book. I like the flat style of police reports. I feel Manichean. A friend of mine attributes his suicide attempts to his having been a battered child. I have utterly lost touch with friends who were dear to me without knowing why. I believe they don't know why themselves. In a Chinese pharmacy, I thought I read on one of the bottles, octopus wigs. At the cocktail hour, I drink tea. I drink Lapsang Souchong, Yunnan, Kimun, Hojika. In the morning, I drink a glass of orange juice. I eat yogurt. I drink half a liter of tea. I prefer the name to the taste of Darjeeling. I notice the length of a journey less if I already know the way. I have lived through 14,370 days. I have lived through 384,874 hours. I have lived through 20,640,000 minutes. I am 1 meter and 86 centimeters tall. My eye is not sated with seeing, nor my ear with hearing. Deja vu gives me more pleasure than great wine. Suburban on and off ramps stress me out, though I rarely lose my way. I am proud to go to a rock concert, and a little bit ashamed of going to a concert of classical music. The polished audiences at jazz concerts bore me. The old white California jazz musicians are antithetical to the idea I have of jazz. I have a fantasy involving female art students. I was not an art student. Everything I know about art I learned on my own. I do not get tired of taking pictures. I do not listen to opera. I prefer chamber music to symphonies. My favorite instrument is the cello. I deplore the death of solo pieces for cello. I play the piano. I may get up on a trampoline someday. I have made one parachute jump. It took longer to talk about than to do. The smoke of a blonde cigarette coughed out by a woman sitting near me on a lawn in summer has left me enchanted. I photograph more old men than children, which violates the norm of family albums. I have several cars without ever worrying about their technical performance. I have bought only used cars. Love does not distinguish me. I do not like the smell of vinyl car seats when it rains. Only once did I buy a new vehicle, a motorcycle, Kawasaki ER500. I have not written fewer postcards since the appearance of the web. I am writing this book on a computer. There will never be a manuscript. I seem too nice for mean girls to like me. I have sometimes taken pictures knowing in advance that they would be bad. I listen to music better through headphones than at a concert. I see a movie better in the movie theater than on TV. I am more attentive to the script of a play when I read it than when I see it performed. I have been to the opera only once. It was one time too many. After that, I refused the invitation of generous friends to come see a production of Madama Butterfly at the Verona Amphitheater, answering only, "I do not like opera." I can't read big books lying down. It tires my arms and crushes my stomach. At night, I eat too much. I feel that I haven't eaten too much more often than not enough. I never regret not having had dinner. In a car, I prefer entering a tunnel to leaving one. On a motorcycle, the opposite. I spent a long time trying to like plastic furniture. I do not like being the center of attention. I do not monopolize the conversation. I sigh inwardly when someone begins to tell a joke. It never occurs to me to go to the movies to see a comedy. I do not like action movies. I do not see westerns. I like the idea of science fiction, but not its literary or cinematic productions. I would be curious to see a pornographic science fiction movie. I would be curious to see a Shakespeare play performed by figure skaters. I would be curious to see a tragic movie performed by comic actors. I would be curious to see a dance piece performed by people who don't have dancers' bodies. I would be curious to see a show of paintings curated by celebrities who think they know about painting. I was passing a gallery that I did not know had gone out of business. From the sidewalk, I saw an installation that had instantly made me want to go inside. A mannequin, crudely costumed as an apostle, was spreading the gospel to other mannequins gathered around him in supposedly period clothes. There were, for some reason, a plow, a cuckoo clock, and a poster of Jamaica. It wasn't until I went inside that I realized the gallery had been replaced by a Mormon temple, and that the installation was not a parody. Fortunately, I do not know what I expect from life. I am afraid of the gaze of hypnotists, even in photos. I sometimes meet people who I think have hypnotic powers. Then I have to perform a ritual to escape from their sorcery. Blink and draw my head back. French words pronounced by Americans make me laugh. Poor people do not frighten me. My parents do not stifle me. Potatoes put me to sleep. An American friend has an LP entitled Music to Help You Stop Smoking. Among the pieces is a Chopin-Tchaikovsky medley. I had an idea of doing a self-portrait with candy, in which my upper lip would bulge from the hard candy tucked inside it. If, lying on my back, I look at a woman's face upside down, her chin becomes a monstrous nose, and her mouth looks like a deformed person's. When she speaks, the inverse motion of her lips distracts me from what she is saying. I don't get the same odor from an English lawn as from a French one. In a landscape, things in the distance tell me no stories. When I was young, I was obsessed with a series of photographs by a photographer whose name I never knew. You saw Jesus come back in the form of a hippie and beaten to death. Years later, I discovered the photographs of Dwayne Michaels, which I loved, but it was a long time before I found out he was also the author of the series entitled Christ in New York. In foreign countries, the street is an exhibition. The lists of things I have to do are not too long. When I lie down in a public place, park or beach, I stretch out, arms crossed, legs slightly apart. I look like a corpse or a Christ fallen out of the sky. Eventually, someone comes over and asks whether I'm all right. Everything I write is true, but so what? At the supermarket in a foreign country, I always think of the Clash song Lost in the Supermarket. It's harder for me to eat bad food than to look at a bad painting. I used to play pool. I used to play knucklebones. I remember the big bridge, the little bridge, the death's head, and many other throws whose names I have forgotten. Playing Monopoly, I used to lose to my brother. I thought it was because he was older. I found out years later that he was cheating as the banker. I used to play Parchesi, Goose is Wild, Mileborns, checkers, chess, gin, liar's poker, strip poker, war, Monopoly, Clue. Board games start off by boring me and end up getting on my nerves. I cannot remember a single game of Monopoly that didn't end with all the players sick of it. I took a trip that lasted 3 months, during which I slept a lot and worked, which got me out of a depression that lasted a year, during which I slept badly and worked very little. In the space of one Sunday in Syracuse, I met an unusual number of strangers who talked too much to me. In a crowd, I am more alone than I am by myself. In a small town, I can't go for a long, aimless walk. I do not go walking in crowds to find models for my photographs, for despite the increased abundance of choice, the faces pass too quickly for me
to desire them. I find the old, the fat, the poor, and the deformed more photogenic than the young, the thin, the rich, and the good-looking, but I am wary of their distinguishing features. I prefer to take pictures of average people, on whom the marks of life are more subtle. So in this sense, I am more interested in photographing the secretary in the insurance office than someone obese with one eye and tattoos. In the United States, with a few simple formalities, I could change my name in an hour or two, and soon I'd have accomplished a project impossible in France, to become anonymous. I wouldn't want to die of drunkenness in a wine vat. In one of my recurring nightmares, gravity is so heavy that the chubby pseudo-humans who wander the empty surface of the earth move in slow motion through an endless moonlit night. When I think it's going to rain, I take a hat to shield my eyes. I end a trip abroad when I stop, seeing ordinary objects as curiosities. I think Sunday is an old day. I do not count calories. I do not pay attention to the nutritional properties of what I eat. All I pay attention to is my taste and my appetite. I am not on a diet. I am wary of any driver who keeps his hat on behind the wheel. When I was a child, I was afraid of being kidnapped. Purees frustrate me because they have no crunch. I do not know what prudence means. Intense sensations tire me out more quickly than subtle ones. The lives of celebrities interest me less than the lives of the unknown. I do not believe anyone has ever cast a spell on me. When I drive on the highway, I spend too much time looking at the cracks. I recollect more than I collect. I have not suffered from a skin rash. I am wary of benches. I do not splash water on my face, I wash. I don't say automobile, I say car. I do not need to make three parties acknowledge a romantic connection. I do not imagine my own wedding. I prefer dogs to cats. I do not have a maid. I do not say, how exquisite. I don't like it when people just drop in. In the morning, I do 60 push-ups and 100 leg lifts. I eat the flesh of a grape. I spit out some of the seeds. Peach fuzz makes my teeth grate. I do not count the number of cherries I eat. Parties are sometimes an ordeal. The word machination triggers my paranoia. I do not hate. I am entranced by the indiscretions of strangers. I admire the ingenuity of traps. Drugstores don't lose their sinister allure when I learned that they are not where you buy drugs. Low necklines excite me. My all-time favorite title is Death Threat with Orchestra by Xavier Brousseron. I feel handsomer after I go to the beach than before. After a shampoo, I make cranial music by running my fingers through my wet hair. Lying on the ground, I see the house upside down. The quest for prestige makes me feel pity. I appreciate silent parlor magicians. I stick with my first impression. My unconscious is quicker and more often correct than my conscious. I do not use adjectives as nouns. I have never broken my leg. To me, too late an hour means in the morning. Hearing a compulsive liar gives me a secret pleasure. I am not depressed when I travel. If I spend a long time bent over and stand up, I see stars. I do not use the word cardigan. I do not have breakfast in bed. Peanut butter and shrimp puffs give me dry mouth. I avoid abbreviations. I lean over a balcony railing to watch people from above, but I don't know where I could lean to see them from below. I have never petted a panther. I used to have a Mexican costume. I pay homage to Suzanne Salmet. I cook with basil, tarragon, coriander. I am thin. I don't sweat much. The more I know about an author, the less I mythologize him. The palm of my hand ages less quickly than my face. I penetrate a woman faster than I pull out. If I kiss for a long time, it hurts the muscles under my tongue. I have never been sodomized. A woman slapped me. I have never been punched. I sleep on my side. I sometimes wake up in the same position as when I went to sleep. I wonder where I will die. On the edge of a precipice, I get a rush from the space and I tremble at the void. When I have vertigo, I fall in my mind. My registered letters contain bad news. I do not see omens. I do not mutilate myself. I do not like show tunes. It wouldn't occur to me to tap dance. I would be perfectly happy to live the same life a second time, but not a third. The first day of snow is a holiday. Lakes attract me, the sea repels me, ponds leave me cold. I do not wear more than 2 colors at a time. Cumin reminds me of armpits. If not for the smell, I wouldn't mind throwing up. I'm talkative for the first 15 minutes. I do not know the name of the color I see behind my eyelids. I would believe more in God if it were a goddess. I have nothing to say about cisterns. I find winks unsettling. I love the sound of the wind and the noise of the rain. My voice carries less in the snow. I know how much I've seen, but not how much I've understood. Apart from maybe 10 countries, I don't know anything about national literatures. I know nothing, for example, about the literature of Honduras, Angola, Pakistan, or the Philippines. I look at the sky in a puddle. I fantasize about skateboards, trampolines, surfing, and paragliding. Soccer, running, tennis, and golf bore me. When I was a child, I did not choose what I ate. Pink flamingos look unreal to me. Some friends consider me obsessive. I do not trust untranslatable texts. Bad weather makes me glad. I do not try to be first. If I write in ink and my notebook falls in the water, everything blurs. I still laugh over the phrasing of that advertisement, "Mammoth is flattening its prices." I am in favor of banning 4x4s in cities. Sore throats and colds help me write. For me, Jeanette, musette, filette, trompette all evoke a single universe. I have not been spanked. I am easily hurt by tongue lashing. As I grow older, I get brief. To see the back of things, I don't always need to have seen the front. I sew by hand and machine. I do not knit. My parents decided to choose my name from among those of 3 children who appear in little lockets passed down in our family. Armand died in Charenton. Adrienne became a painter. Thanks to some premonition and hoping to prevent me from going crazy or becoming a painter, they chose Édouard, which I have punctured at least one of their superstitions. I do not work much with a flash because I don't like interruptions. I admire the intelligence of ecological solutions. I do not dream of going on a cruise. I do not use the following expressions. That rings a bell. Laters. Works for me. That's hot. I do not say to someone I haven't seen in a long time, "What's the word?" When someone talks to me about his or her energy, I feel the conversation grinding to a halt. I am afraid of ending up a bum. I am afraid of having my computer and negative stolen. I cannot tell what in me is innate. I do not have a head for business. I do not vary what I serve at dinner parties. I have stepped on a rake and had the handle hit me in the face. I do not follow the advice in guidebooks. I trust in chance, my intuition, and the advice of the natives. The motto of the Collège Stalinnas, where I spent 15 years, is French without fear, Christian beyond reproach. I've gone to 4 psychiatrists, 1 psychologist, 1 psychotherapist, and 5 psychoanalysts. I've spent 15 days in a psychiatric hospital, and every week for months I checked into another psychiatric hospital. I look for the simple things I can no longer see. I do not go to confession. Legs slightly open excite me more than legs wide open. I have trouble forbidding. I am not mature. Australia attracts me no more and no less than Canada. I used to love shells, pocket knives, truncheons, and other army supplies. Sunstroke makes me hot on the outside and cold on the inside. I am leery from movies adapted from novels and of novels adapted from movies. I don't get off on possession. I don't remember what I saw when I emerged from the womb. Sergeant Garcia made all sergeants seem comical to me. I spent a year languishing because I didn't travel. I appreciate the simplicity of biblical language. I vote. I live better in 2 houses than in 1. I appreciate swingers clubs, which take the logic of the nightclub to its natural conclusion. I was 5 years old when a clown said, "And now I'm going to ask a little boy to come up on stage." There was a drum roll and the spotlight fell on me. When the clown came towards me, I cried so fiercely that he turned to another child. I have had the measles, the mumps, and the chicken pox. I have seen an eagle. I have seen starfish. I learned to draw by copying pornographic photographs. I have a foggy sense of history, and of stories in general. Chronology bores me. I do not suffer from the absence of those I love. I prefer desire to pleasure. My death will change nothing. I would like to write in a language not my own. I consent to feeling moved by sunsets. Abundance leaves me bewildered. There is no age I admire. I can do without the interludes, but I appreciate the preliminaries. I find tips humiliating for the giver and the receiver. After I get a haircut, my hair's too short. The speed of a cheetah still amazes me. I like to have habits, then suddenly change them. I don't show up early because I don't like to wait. Waiting doesn't bother me if I expected it, but that's not really waiting. I don't like to order or be ordered around. I editorialize. I move on. When I was a child, I didn't ask riddles. I don't know how many animals I could recognize by scent. To survive an ordeal, I break it up into sections. I cannot remember having spoken to a New Zealander. I improvise only at the piano. Despite myself, I look away when I pass a dwarf. I hear the word marvelous and I marvel. I do not use the word gamine. As far as I know, only one woman has gotten pregnant by me. Borrowing is an ordeal. They took out 4 wisdom teeth, unless maybe it was 2. Because of their names, certain acts strike me as outdated. For example, laying down a deposit. Tonsils made me think of spiders. I have come into mouths. I have come on faces. I have come in pussies. I have come on breasts. I have come in hands. I have come on pubes. I have come on bellies. I have come on and in asses. I have come on backs. I have come in hair. I have come on thighs. In the moment, I suffer less from a big shock than a small one. There are words that I always use with some other words, for example, aforethought. I do not notice earrings, necklaces, rings, and bracelets except to disapprove. Diamonds and fur coats put me off. I ask for several estimates. I don't regret not having been revealed. I don't mind giving a Christmas bonus, but I don't want a free calendar. I will gladly pay musicians and restaurants to stop playing. I do not wait for a sale to buy. The word titbit somehow makes me think of pedophilia. When I look at a strawberry, I think of a tongue. When I lick one, of a kiss. I can see how drops of water could be torture. A burn on my tongue has a taste. My memories, good or bad, are sad the way dead things are sad. A friend can let me down, but not an enemy. I ask the price before I buy. I go nowhere with my eyes closed. When I was a child, I had bad taste in music. Playing sports bores me after an hour. Laughing unarouses me. Often I wish it were tomorrow. My memory is structured like a disco ball. I wonder if there are still parents around who threaten their children with whipping. The voice, like lyrics, and the face of Daniel Dark make French rock listenable to me. The best conversations I had date from adolescence, with a friend at whose place we drank cocktails that we made by mixing his mother's liquor at random. We would talk until sunrise in the salon of that big house where Mallarmé had once been a guest. In the course of those nights, I delivered speeches on love, politics, God, and death, of which I retain not one word, even though sometimes I came up with them doubled over in laughter. Years later, this friend told his wife that he had left something in the house just as they were going to play tennis. He went down to the basement and put a bullet in his head with the gun he had carefully prepared. I have memories of comets with powdery tails. I read the dictionary. I went into a glass labyrinth called the Palace of Mirrors. I wonder where the dreams go that I don't remember. I do not know what to do with my hands when they have nothing to do. Even though it's not for me, I turn around when someone whistles in the street. Dangerous animals do not scare me. I have seen lightning. I wish they had slides for grown-ups. I have read more volumes 1 than volumes 2. The date on my birth certificate is wrong. I am not sure I have any influence. I talk to my things when they're sad. I don't know why I write. I prefer to ruin a monument. I am calm during reunions. I have nothing against New Year's Eve. 15 years old is the middle of my life, regardless of when I die. I believe there is an afterlife, but not an after death. I do not ask, do you love me? Only once I can say I'm dying without telling a lie. The best day of my life may already be behind me. That's the end.